Right. We got such different cues on this program. I'm not used to them.
Yeah, well, a little bit more professional than normal when it comes to this week with me. So,
Well,
I mean, next week I could stop it at 2 and just have you count silently 1 to 0, like they do on TV. But no.
Fun fact: I actually hit the button at 2, but
anyway, welcome to a new installment of Moonhawk Studios Presents. I am your. I don't know. I'm not even sure how to frame myself. Well, here's the thing. Mac is around. MC. Yeah, Mac is around. He's just having massive technical problems right now.
So we don't typical know. MSP.
Yeah, he's having connection issues because of his housing situation, let's say, and he has been we're going to be on probably about 5 minutes earlier, but he's been in and out. But
yeah, we really don't have anything confirmed here. But since our guest is on a time crunch, we're starting so that the guest can do anything.
Right. All right. That's why we're.
Yeah. Well, so that's
his goal. Okay, he is back with us now. So,
for the moment.
Okay. Hopefully this sticks. But we're just going to carry on regardless here at this point for our guest's sake. So,
yeah. Speaking of which, I want to welcome to the broadcast one Brad Williams of Once Upon a Wasteland, a Fallout story.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, thank you for being with us here this week. Apologies about the technological problems. It's kind of been
it's a thing with us, and
don't worry. I'm well acquainted with technical difficulties, so
Murphy's Law hates us.
Good.
I totally understand.
All right, that's good to know.
Yeah. Right. So how we like to get started is, first of all, a bit of an introduction is probably in order. Who are you? What is Once Upon a Wasteland and all that business?
Yeah, so as you said, my name is Brad Williams, and I'm the creator and showrunner of Once Upon a Wasteland, which is an audio fiction podcast that is currently about midway through its 3rd season. It takes place in the Fallout universe, the Bethesda Softworks Fallout universe, which has been around now for 25 years. There's a new TV show coming out, which they're hyping up pretty heavily, but the story takes place specifically in the part of the universe that's featured in Fallout 76, which is the most recent entry in the series, and it is a live service game, the first live service game in the Fallout series, and it's been going strong now for since 2001. 2001, not quite that long, since 2021. And we've won awards. We've got Bethesda in our corner. We've got a lot of recognition both inside and outside the core Fallout community, and it's been pretty great.
Right. I've noticed that apparently this podcast of yours has won 8 Signal Awards.
Yeah, the Signal Awards are new as of last year. They spun off from the Webby Awards, which have been around since the 90s. But yeah, they decided podcasting has become such a big thing in recent years. I mean, podcasting has been around for a long time, but it's really exploded. I think even before COVID, but during COVID, it really blew up. And you have, the big names like, the Joe Rogans and Mark Marons and the people like that. So they decided that it was time to kind of branch out and specifically have something that was for podcasting. It mostly, I guess it's probably because there are more discussion podcasts than there are audio fiction podcasts, but most of the Signal Awards categories sort of cater toward those discussion podcasts. But there are also several that can work for audio fiction, like best writing, and they do have specific categories for scripted fiction as well. So they do balance it out as best they can. One of the nice things about the Signal Awards too is we're an indie shop, right? We don't have big studio backing. We don't have funding from sources outside of my own, what I find in the couch cushions. So the first year we were up against, see if I can remember, in the category, we were only nominated in one category in the first year, but we were up against shows from Al Jazeera, ABC News, Q Code, and Realm, I think. So, and every one of those are massive, massive, massive operations. So to win in a category like that against, professional writers with big studio backing and actual resources at their disposal was pretty good. And I think that was, it's very hard in this. I mean, I'm sure it's the same for you, but it's very difficult in podcasting, and especially in audio fiction, to know if you're doing well, if you're doing something that's good. You have your internal measures of that kind of thing, but external recognition and external assessments of that are very difficult to come by. It's hard to get people to leave reviews. It's hard to have people just reach out and say, hey, that episode was good, or hey, you could have done this a little bit better. That kind of stuff doesn't really happen. So to get awards recognition like that it's nice to get that pat on the back to show you, some external reinforcement, I think, is maybe the best way to put it, that you're on the right track and you're doing something good.
Yes, it can be. I'm like, it might depend on the award. But
yeah, and I'll tell you, the awards thing is pretty fraught, and I've learned a lot since I've been doing this. So not all awards are created equal, and it's not. And I don't necessarily mean that in the sense that, one award may be more prestigious than another. Like the Ambi Awards, for example, are very prestigious. They've been around for a long time. I don't really necessarily mean it like that. It's more in the sense that the way each award program is set up will cater to a different demographic, or it will approach the way that things are assessed in a different way. And each of those different ways may or may not fit the way that you approach things, and it may or may not fit the particular product that you're putting out there. So learning the nuances of that, because it can get pretty expensive to enter these awards, knowing which ones are worth spending that money on and which ones maybe aren't the best fit is definitely something that's been a big lesson learned over the past few years.
Like, gotta admit, we don't have a lot of experience with awards, so that are outside of our particular realm of knowledge. That's good to know, in case we ever do go down that path.
Yeah, it does speak to another part of this. There's a whole world out there that I had no idea existed when I started this, even though I was working alongside people who did have experience. Like, just the landscape it's much richer, it's much more varied than I expected it to be. And, learning about all those different areas of it, even Discord servers that cater to audio fiction, or, other kinds of communities. Just so many different things out there that there is to discover.
And I suppose that brings me to the next question, and that is, how did this all start? Like, what made you wake up one day and say, I'm going to do a Fallout podcast?
Well, I'm a maniac. It's probably the baseline reason for it. But the origin story is, in February of 2021, I was on the Fallout 76 Reddit, and there was an audio fiction creator who put out a casting call. He wanted some voices for his Fallout-based audio fiction project, and I have experience as an actor. I've done voice acting, narration, stage acting, a little bit of TV. So I thought, you know what, it's not a paid gig. It's the kind of thing that I can do, or have fun with if I get cast. And it'd just be, a way to have a little bit of fun doing something that I enjoyed doing without the pressure of worrying about making it a career anymore. So I auditioned, got a role, I still do that role actually today. And in the course of doing that, I started to talk with that creator about, about the process. And, we talked about my background as a screenwriter and went through character backstories and scenarios and those kinds of things. And the more that I wrote, the more he encouraged me and said, you should really consider doing your own podcast. So once I got everything set up in terms of, well, what kind of story do I want to tell? What are the characters going to look like? What am I trying to accomplish? Like when you do anything creative, you have to understand what you're trying to do, what you're trying to say. So I knew early on that what I wanted to do was I wanted to tell a story that was emotionally moving. That's what I wanted to do. So working through that and getting it to the point that what I wanted to accomplish turned into story arcs and character arcs and all those sorts of things. Then it got to the point where I started, getting down to the actual nuts and bolts of it. Like, how do you make a podcast? How do you edit it? How do you get actors? How do you publish it? All those kinds of things. So I guess the TLDR is I was encouraged by the creator of the Modus Files is that show, by the way. Lawrence McNamara is the creator. Great guy. Great show. And with his encouragement and his assistance, both direct assistance and also introducing me to people who could help me in other ways, with logistics and that kind of thing. He also helped me get a couple of my actors. That's where it started. So one of the things that I usually mention when I talk about this is I stopped trying to make screenwriting a career in the late 90s. I think around 1998 was when I sent my last pitch out. And it was at that point that it was like, okay, I don't think I can make this a career. I need to find a day job and, make that kind of a career. And I did that. And I hadn't written anything for a quarter century before I started working on this. So, it was nice to get back in the saddle to do that. Because I enjoy writing in the sense that I like writing things that people enjoy. I know there are a lot of writers out there who can write for the sake of writing, even if no one is ever going to see it. And I really admire that, but I can't do it. I have to have the goal in mind of people experiencing it, whatever, if it's something like, if it's TV, if it's something like this, if it's novel kind of thing, I have to know that it's going to be out there for people to enjoy. So, 25 years later, I decided to jump in and start working on it. And I think my previous experience helped me in terms of, I know how to write a script. Like, I know how formatting works and how to build that kind of thing from a nuts and bolts perspective. So that part of it, I think, gave me a little bit of a head start. But it's really about the ideas and the story. But the most important thing is, in my opinion, and I say this all the time, is you have to have a good cast. The first award that we won was for best writing, but I said from the go, nobody would have voted for us for that award if the performances that brought that writing to life were not outstanding, and they were. So that award is as much for the actors as it is for me as the writers. So, that was a big part of it.
Like, there's actually a fair few questions that arise from this. It's just the first one. In terms of the writing, was writing for this audio drama, in transitioning from screenwriting experience, all that different?
No, mostly because of my writing style is more about characters and character dynamics and interactions and relationships and those aspects of a story. So I think if I was more a visual screenwriter, I think that the transition would have been a lot more difficult. But I've always written stuff that's been pretty talky, so it wasn't as big of a transition as I think it could have been.
Fair enough. And in terms of your 90s screenwriting career, did you write anything that got picked up?
No, the most of the stuff that I did, I sent out spec scripts. I sent out pitches. Here and there, I would, consult on other people's projects, that kind of thing. So the writing was really on the wall that this wasn't going to be a career for me. I did get to work alongside some pretty awesome people. Matthew Barry is probably the one that people have heard of. He is. He's on ESPN now, the talented Mr. Rowe.
I know him. Yeah,
yeah, not the Matthew Barry who's on what We Do in the Shadows. Totally different guy.
ESPN.
Yeah. He was a screenwriter, and I worked with him when I was in school. When I was in college, we went to school together. And his last film was Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles, and if you ever have a chance to hear him tell the story of that, it is absolutely hysterical, and it will change your opinion of Paul Hogan forever.
I'm like, I hope in a good way.
No.
Oh dear.
I kind of figure.
Yeah, I'm like, that's unfortunate, but
yeah.
I suppose if we ever get Matt Berry on the program,
yep.
We'll.
Yeah, you'll definitely have to. He's told the story several times, so it's I'm not telling any secrets here. It's but he's an extremely funny guy. Like, he's not just a funny writer or a funny personality on TV. He's just a funny guy in general, and nicest guy on the planet.
That's good to know.
I texted him when I saw Avengers. I forget which one it was. One of the last two Avengers movies, either Infinity War or Endgame. I think it was Endgame. He was in it, and I texted him like, "Did I just see you in Avengers?" And he's like, "Good eye."
And now, in terms of the actual show, did you transpose any of your Fallout 76 play experiences to the program?
Kind of. So one of the things that I did make a pretty firm decision on early on was I didn't want to retell or explore any of the stories that had already been told within the game. So the setting and some of the characters and some of the things that had happened would be referenced, but I'm not telling a story about how we fixed the Scorched Plague, for example. That wasn't what I wanted to do. The main character grew out of a very rudimentary backstory that I wrote for my OC. So from that perspective, that did come into play. But I feel like it's important to tell new stories. I shouldn't. I got to be careful about how I say that. It's important to me that I tell new stories. That's not to say that existing stories can't be explored in a really interesting and good way. It's just not something that I'm interested in doing. And if I tried to do that, I don't think it would turn out that well, just because I wouldn't be motivated by it.
Yeah, understandable. And there could be problems with trying to tell, established stories in, a universe that's owned by a fairly sizable company.
Yeah, Bethesda is pretty good about that, though. They're pretty hands off. I don't know of any cases where a fan project has been something that they've shut down. I think the way it was explained to me early on by Kenny, who does the Chad podcast, was I think it was him that said this. Basically, as long as you're not like a corporate entity doing this, they're not going to bother you. You can even monetize. Just don't make a profit on it. Like don't make it your business. I think that's that's kind of the cutoff for it. And, I mean, there's all kinds of different Fallout and other projects based on other Bethesda IPs, and they're pretty hands-off. They're like the anti-Nintendo. Like, I see stuff that I just blanch. Like, when I opened my first merch store, I looked at some of the Fallout stuff that was being sold out there, and I'm like, these are just straight up Bethesda trademarks like that people are selling on T-shirts. I'm like, okay, I mean, good for you. I admire the hustle, but so yeah, I think it has to get pretty big for them to care about it. But they do know us. We that's one of the things that's also, you know, we talked about the awards, but one of the other things that's been really gratifying is us being recognized by Bethesda and sort of promoted by Bethesda in whatever way they can for a project like this. There's some guardrails that they can't cross with a project like this because it's unofficial and it's not something they're involved with. So you can't get an official endorsement. But like for the 25th anniversary stuff, they gave us a ton of stuff to give away. You know, prints and gift cards and all kinds of things like that. So, you know, it's nice to know that Bethesda thinks we're doing something that's worth shining a little bit of a spotlight on.
Indeed. And I will say that runs fairly contrarian to, let's say, their popular image online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
like I know Bethesda's cast as kind of an ogre and a bugbear alongside various other corporate entities. Yeah,
and I mean, I don't know enough about them to say either way, but it's entirely possible that they are that way with other stuff. You know, in the way that they approach other things. I mean, I don't know, but it wouldn't necessarily surprise me because they are a pretty big studio owned by one of the largest corporations in the world. So that, you know, that kind of thing can happen. But purely in terms of supporting creators and somewhere between supporting creators and leaving creators alone to do their thing without telling them they can't, they've been great.
Indeed. Like. And yeah, that is good. You know, it's just, you know, for the purposes of supposition, if you had to divorce this project from the Fallout universe, would that be attainable?
Yes. I've actually thought about that. I don't mean thought about it from the perspective of like planning on doing it, but I've thought about how I could spin things off. I've thought about
it's
how
a what
I can
if scenario, basically.
Yeah, and there's because of the core of the story doesn't depend on the setting as much as some of the other stories that are out there. I could certainly do that. I'm probably not going to be able to do it, but there was a spin-off series that I was thinking about based on something that happened last season. I actually set it up that way so that I had it as an option if I wanted to do it. But there's all kinds of options, and this season is another example, I think, of how that can happen.
That's a fairly savvy move because, once again, you know, it's good that Bethesda is being magnanimous now, but the future is always uncertain, let's say. Like, you can ask people who have been dealing with Wizards of the Coast about it.
And even beyond that, the one thing that people don't necessarily like to talk about, when you operate outside the video game space, the video game creator space, in the way that I do, I have one foot in the Fallout community. I have one foot outside of it for, you know, because I market the show not just for hardcore Fallout fans. I want it to be accessible to everyone. And I've had people tell me they didn't even know it was based on an existing IP for the first half of the season that they listened to until somebody clued them in. So it's a tough line to straddle because you don't want to alienate Fallout fans. I definitely don't. I am a Fallout fan. But I also don't want to make it so inscrutable and opaque to people from outside that they're not going to want to buy in. So I was actually pretty gratified when Todd Howard started talking about their approach for the TV show, because he said basically the same thing. He said that it's going to be a new story. It's going to respect existing canon and existing lore. It's not going to contradict anything. It's not going to retcon anything. And that was exactly the approach that I adopted. I'm telling a totally new story, but I am being very careful to not step outside of what works within the Fallout universe, whether that's canon and lore, whether it's even the mood that a Fallout story should have, those kinds of things.
I mean, I suppose you are, how do I put this? I'm not sure if that's the right word, but, you're an unofficial project. So, if you don't get something canonically right, it's not going to really affect anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it's like you stating that there's, let's say, a new kind of super mutant out there in Appalachia. That's just your invention. It's not something that, Bethesda is pushing on to the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and that really comes into play. If you're not going to tell stories that already exist within any of the games, then it does open it up to doing things like that. I haven't introduced any new super mutants, but I have mostly, well, no, I mean, in all 3 seasons, now I think about it, things that have not been necessarily mentioned, but are based on things that are within canon and within existing lore, but I've adapted them and said, okay, but so this thing exists, so it should follow that this should be possible. So,
right.
You sort of extrapolate out from the stuff that's there, and that's where you have to be careful, because you certainly can get into trouble. You can go too far. But I also like to stretch. I kind of like to push things to see how, not how far I can take it, but to see what kinds of interesting things I can do with that existing lore while continuing to respect it.
I'm like, I'm reminded of the Lord of the Rings movies. Like, for example, we got the Uruk-hai on screen, and they were not a creature that was, rather, it wasn't detailed.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some leeway for interpretation, which, does set up expectations. And oh boy.
Well,
look, we're talking about Fallout and canonicity. There is an entire conversation to be had about that, because, there are essentially 2 different flavors of Fallout. There's current day Bethesda Fallout, but there's also, let's say, Interplay, Black Isle / Obsidian Fallout.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they are very different. If you've ever played, like, New Vegas versus Fallout 3, you'll know.
Oh, yeah.
But, we do not have the bandwidth to get into that minutia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's you do kind of have to make a choice. I know Preston Harden, who does True Vault Escapades, his show is New Vegas based, but he went off in a very interesting and cool direction by making it a kind of a noir detective story that's set in New Vegas. So he's executed on that really, really effectively. So that's, it can definitely be done on both of them. But I think part of the reason why telling a story in the Bethesda version of the Fallout universe fits for me is I tend to like to write things hopefully, and I like things to be upbeat, no matter if you're in a post-apocalyptic hellscape or not. I think that it's important to understand that hope, and also sort of the quirky charm that exists in the Bethesda version of Fallout. That also exists in the Obsidian version. I can't speak for Interplay and Black Isle, but it also exists. It's still a little a little harder in the Obsidian version. There's more of an edge to it in a way that doesn't really suit the way that I write. I'm a comedy writer at heart. So, the sort of goofy charm that you see in Bethesda Fallout fits my style a little bit better too. Now, I can tell you one thing, and I didn't know this at the time, without getting too much into spoilers. In the first season, the story centered on the use of, if you're familiar with Fallout 4, the memory loungers. So that technology. And it's like, well, I did a lot of research, didn't find any indication that the technology couldn't have existed. So I rolled with it, and I used the photo mode glitch to explore Vault 76 before you exit it for the first time, to just look in the areas that are closed off that you can't normally access. And I found 2 memory loungers in Vault 76. So I'm like, all right, I got it right. I found a secret thing with without even knowing I did it. I referenced a little Easter egg that they put in there.
Like, admittedly, I haven't played Fallout 4 yet. Like, I own it. It's one of the games on the backlog.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's also interesting that you've chosen Fallout 76, which is, let's say, the most contentious of Bethesda's Fallout titles. Because
that's one word for it.
I mean, well, the thing is, a lot of people don't know how far Fallout 76 has come since its, let's say, checkered launch.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I can tell you, I didn't play in beta. I did play on day one, and I was so frustrated by it that I quit playing after a week or two. And I didn't come back until Wastelanders dropped. So I definitely understand what the game... Like, I can understand what the game was like at launch, and also the level of frustration that it engendered in people, because it engendered it in me. So I 100% get it. I do get a little bit tired of the lazy takes that sound like they came from people who haven't played the game since 3 weeks after it launched. There are definitely legitimate criticisms to be levied at the game today. Absolutely. It is... It's a Bethesda game. It's not perfect. Far from it. There are ongoing issues. There are still a lot of bugs. There's some weird quality of life things. There are legitimate criticisms to be levied at the game. But when I see the same tired old tropes trotted out, and like I said, I wish I could remember the reference I made, but the one, it's like, oh, people still play that game? Like, yes, people do still play that game, and you clearly don't. So
it's quite popular on my stream.
Yeah, like it's such a weird, lazy take. It is the coldest of hot takes. So I like I said, it's far from a perfect game. I think it's very good, and it's certainly, like you alluded to, worlds better than it was at launch. Bethesda and the other studios that they brought in to help out have worked extremely hard to make it better. And there's a lot still to be done, but they put a lot of content in. They have done a ton of bug fixes. They've done a ton of quality of life fixes. So it's not like they have just let it fester in the state that it was in. So
Shadows Mist and I played on Sundays for a while, and we started with when the Pit dropped for free on Amazon Prime Gaming.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely found some value in it, and that was my first actual physical experience with Fallout. I played the OG Fallout on a compact Presario computer back in 1998. And then forgot about it for a while.
Well,
yep.
And also, I should mention one other reason why I chose Fallout 76 was another part of the sort of the origin story for the show also came from Reddit. It was something I noticed myself, but I also noticed that a lot of other people noticed it. When Steel Dawn dropped, the Brotherhood of Steel DLC, I noticed that everybody loved Scribe Valdez. Everybody. And people were just going on and on and on about her, and they said a lot of them said, well, why you should be able to romance Scribe Valdez like you can romance Beckett, or you can romance the astronaut, but you can't. So I thought, well, that's like a story prompt. What if you could? and that became the core love story of the show.
I love it. I have to admit that Fallout 76 is also a lot sexier than the other Fallout games before it.
Yeah, I mean, Fallout 4 could get there. Like there, you can find it on YouTube. As the kids say, Fallout 4 could get it. Yeah, my favorite interaction is if your companion is Kate and you switch to Piper. Kate will say, have fun out there. Maybe next time we can make it a threesome. And Piper says, never gonna happen, Kate. So it's just stuff like that. Like, it's funny because clearly Kate has propositioned Piper before, and she's just not having it. So yeah, little stuff like that. It's Fallout 4. Yes. Fallout 4 definitely gets a little thirsty sometimes.
And of course, I have to do my late introduction here for the cheap seats out there. Mac Paladin, Moonhawk Studios presents. I have a question. No, been having technical issues on my end, so
yeah,
glad to be here.
That'll
last.
I will say though, I've definitely written more lines for Scribe Valdez than the actual writers of Fallout 76 have, like a significantly larger number of lines. I feel bad for Vit sometimes. I even tell her, I'm like, I'm sorry that I gave you 130 lines in this episode.
I wasn't sure how my audio quality would be, but I wanted to comment earlier about the whole writing aspect, because I had a very similar start with my situation in that I wrote a copious amount of Star Trek fan fiction back in the day. And that evolved into an original series, which I said, hey, I'm going to totally make a teleplay or screenplay about this. And then I was like, and of course, my initial casting option was that I was building a vehicle around Jonathan Frakes.
Mm-hmm.
And of course,
build a vehicle around worse.
Right.
Yeah,
and as time moved on, I realized to myself, I should just publish a novel, because otherwise I'm never going to get this out there.
Well, see, it's great that you have that as an option. I do not, because my prose, my long form is terrible, absolutely dire. I'm a horrific novel / short story writer. I always say that I think in screenplay. Like it doesn't compute if I try to write the other. If I try to write in that long form style.
Yeah, it's tricky, but you see, of course, being the ADHD child that I am able to quote unquote code switch between prose and script format very easily. I don't know what it is, but I just derail my brain and jump the track and switch modes. It just is something. I'm multi-talented, but I finish nothing.
We know.
Petty fan, I'll see you after class.
You're not my dad.
Anyway, I just wanted to show that, so that way that's in there before we move on. Adam, if you still had more formal stuff, I don't want to derail this too far.
Fair enough. Yeah, I do want to shift a bit, though, because, you did mention ways back about the casting, and how good that is. And I'm wondering, how did you assemble said cast?
Well, let me tell you, that was an adventure. And Lawrence from Modus Files, who I mentioned earlier, was integral in me getting the cast that I did. I put out a casting call, and I didn't get many responses at all, which I learned later is pretty normal. If you have a new project by a new creator, people are often reluctant to audition for it because so many projects never get off the ground. So when we did our season, let me think, our first season 3 casting call, we got several hundred auditions for the roles that we had. But that first one, we got like 3 auditions. And it's not even an exaggeration. And none of them really fit what I was looking for. So talking to Lawrence, I wanted for the role for Odessa, I wanted someone who had appeared in his show, not a regular cast member, but somebody who had been in his Halloween special that had just come out. And that's Vitriol. So I asked her. He made the introduction, and asked her, showed her, gave her the first couple of scripts, and she signed on. She was the first person to sign on. Actually, no, she was the second person to sign on. The first person was the narrator. And then Letitia, who plays Beth, actually expressed interest to Lawrence. And, obviously there was no way I wasn't going to bring Letitia on because she's amazing. And so there I had the core cast. Now, there was a third character, Amanda, that I had originally envisioned as kind of just a not two-dimensional, but a character that wasn't going to have a really big role moving forward. But I cast Lucy Middleton, who was also in Lawrence's show, in that role, and she was so good and got the character that that character's become a third lead in the show. So once I got that initial casting down, that was the most important part, because the show was always going to be about those 2 main characters. So as long as I had that right, the rest I was pretty confident was going to fall into place, and it did. And Vit, she isn't just Odessa. She became a co-producer. She and I have become very close. She's been, integral to the success of the show, keeping me going, in addition to just knocking it out of the park as a voice actress as well. So that's another great thing that makes me super glad that I did this in the first place. And as the show got some people listening to it, that made other people want to be involved. So when I put out future casting calls, I mentioned the one that we did for the 3rd season, but even casting calls that we did before that, I got a lot more responses, and I was able to assemble some pretty great casts of characters that were that would only appear for either one season or part of one season, as opposed to the lead characters that are with us the whole time. And one thing, even though, like I mentioned earlier, I have a history in voice acting. One of the things that was a hard line for me was I did not want to be in the show. I was like, I've done that. I don't want to. I did. I've appeared in it a couple times, just in small roles, but for the most part, I kind of stay out of it and let the other folks work their magic.
And that's a pretty typical creator thing, I suppose. Making.
I had the crown. Yeah, I had the crown thrust upon me in my series.
Right, you actually play a major character in.
I play the major character.
I know.
Well, one other thing about me is I'm also pretty contrary. So if something seems like an obvious thing to do, I don't want to do it. And casting myself in, and there's one role actually that would have been perfect for me, but not playing that role since it wasn't the obvious thing to do. That's kind of why I did it. And I end up writing myself into corners just to sort of challenge myself. Like at the end of the first season, I did an epilogue that gives away how the story ends. Like, I explicitly tell the audience in that epilogue how, the story of these two people ends, as well as some of the stuff that happens in between. So I was like, by doing that, my thought was, I have to challenge myself now to be able to tell a story that people still want to listen to, that's still compelling, that's still emotional, it's worth investing in, even though you know how it ends. So I like to do little things like that to challenge myself, and not casting myself was maybe the first one of those.
It is restraint that not all could handle, and some haven't. Like, Lady in the Water comes to mind.
Oh God! Don't even talk to me about that movie. So I know this is not part of the standard talk, but I got to tell you, that movie made me madder than any movie I have ever seen in my life when I saw it in the theater. Like, I think the only one, even Rise of Skywalker, which I think is probably the worst movie I saw in the theater, even that one didn't make me as mad. I think maybe because I didn't expect it to be any good. Lady in the Water, the first teaser trailer came out. I was like, this is going to be the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life.
Oh dear.
The teaser trailer was fantastic. It was so good. It was mysterious, and the visuals were great, and it really set the stage for just a fascinating, interesting, emotional story. And then, my goodness, that movie, I can't. I no words. It was so bad. Like, yeah, I just got madder and madder the longer I sat in that theater, and I've never walked out of a movie in my life. Came close once, but I've never walked out, and I did not walk out of that one. I probably should have, but at that point, it's like, well, I might as well see how it ends. I paid my $7 or whatever it was at the time that came out, but oh gosh, I have never been more disappointed in a movie that I had high hopes for in my life than that one. Damn it, M. Night.
That's something.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember. I vaguely have a recollection of walking out of a film once, but normally I get so invested in the train wreck.
Yeah, I think it's for me. It's just.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think it's the Brit in me that's just not done. It's not
right.
done. So the closest I ever came was Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, which
God,
which was a movie I should have loved, and I think it's similar to Lady in the Water, but not quite the same. Leo DiCaprio, thought he was cool. Always, enjoyed the stuff that he'd been in. Big crush on Claire Danes. Loved Baz Luhrmann. Strictly Ballroom is one of my favorite movies. Love that movie so much. I've watched it a bajillion times. And I saw that one. I'm just like, this is, and it wasn't even that it was bad. It was just, this is not a movie that I want to watch. So it's a different kind of a thing. Where Lady in the Water was just a bad movie, and Rise of Skywalker was just a bad movie. This wasn't a bad movie. It just aggressively didn't click with me. I liked Harold Perrineau as Mercutio. He was the only person. The only thing about the movie that I liked was his performance, because I thought he was good. But other than that, nope.
I like Romeo and Juliet more than Moulin Rouge.
I haven't seen Moulin Rouge. And I think it's probably because I didn't like Romeo and Juliet, and I didn't want to spoil it. That'd be the tiebreaker, since I loved Strictly Ballroom so much. I'm sure I'll get around to it eventually.
Adam, that's fighting words for some people.
I know. I'm like, my sister-in-law loves Moulin Rouge, and my older brother loves Romeo and Juliet. Like,
I have an unhealthy relation. I have an unhealthy, very American relationship with Schadenfreude.
Have you ever seen Avenue Q?
I have, yes.
So the Schadenfreude song.
Sorry, I'm having a very childlike reaction to that reference.
So I didn't see Avenue Q on Broadway. I saw Avenue Q in the West End. Which,
oh dear God!
Like, why would you see a movie set in New York City in the West End and not Broadway? It happened to be playing, and we went to see it.
I should have seen it when I was in London. It was playing, but that night some of my other plans fell through, so I was grumping. We were only in London for a few days.
I had to piece it together. From clips of the Vegas show on the internet.
Oh.
Yeah, because I don't have Broadway money to travel.
Well, so the big difference that I noticed, well, there were a few differences in the West End show and the Broadway show. One of them was that Gary Coleman, the character of Gary Coleman, was just played by a guy, just a regular guy. I assume it was because they figured that British audiences wouldn't get the joke. But I can tell you firsthand, Different Strokes was on the air in the UK, in syndication. So I don't know. But there were also some of the jokes were different. When they passed the hat, the hat came up to the front, and the one person said, €1? You can't buy anything with this. So little jokes like that were, and instead of the Polish joke thing, it was they said, you tell French jokes, don't you? Well, those French sure are a-holes, they just changed some of the jokes around. But mostly
they do that a lot. They did that. Mm-hmm. They did that with the visual of Captain America's notes in Winter Soldier.
Really?
Yeah. They so instead of having like Star Trek as the show he needed to watch in the UK, he had Doctor Who.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, of all the things that he needed to catch up on in the modern era, he had this little note, but he had this little black book, and instead of being numbers of girls, it was his bucket list of all the pop culture things he missed.
Oh yeah, I do remember the little black book. It makes sense that they would do some of that. Although, I mean, there's so much American culture in the UK that they probably had to do less of it there than they did in other places.
Yeah, but it's not surprising that they did that. I'm just surprised that for the UK, for the West End version, that they didn't say you can't buy that for £1, and then reference Pound Town, which is one of their dollar stores.
It's Pound Land, not Pound Town. Pound Town is something very different.
I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah. Right.
It's still funny either way.
Oh, it is.
At any rate, so recentering things, especially we should talk about the show itself, so to speak. Mm-hmm. That is, I think it's been mentioned a few times that this is a romance story.
Mm-hmm.
Between
of course it is. It's Fallout.
Yeah.
Right. Like Elizabeth Kirby and Odessa Valdez.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's, I think part of that also is, I mentioned that I like to be contrary, and the fact that it being a romance is another example of that, because I thought to myself, what genre of story would be least likely to appeal to a video game audience?
Oh God.
And romance was what I thought of, and I thought, and I don't mean that.
Have you played Baldur's Gate 3?
I have. Vit is a very big fan of Baldur's Gate 3. But I mean, and I mean it more from the perspective of a stereotypical video game fan, not because if I really thought that it wouldn't have any appeal, I wouldn't have done it. I'm not that.
The pushes taped glasses up and says, right, actually, crew.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, and even in Fallout, I mean, romance has been an important part, not just in terms of how you're able to romance companions in 76 and Fallout 4 and other games, not even from that perspective, just the hints that you see of it in other things, like in notes that you find or holotapes, or even skeletons that you find together. So that's something that at its core has been part of the games since the games have existed. So,
really, it's Fallout 2.
Well, I should
really
say
big on the romance.
Yeah, I should say it's. I'm thinking more New Vegas, Fallout 4,
right,
and 76 because there's an aspect of it in there. Yeah.
Definitely in the quasi FPS era. I call it quasi because Bethesda, of course, decided to go weird with it. I complain about this vigorously. On stream. Is that in traditional FPS controls, and as soon as I go off on that, everybody tunes out.
But yeah, so that was where it came from. Just that part of it. And I could have done it more as a comedy. Like I said, I'm a comedy writer at heart. That's where most of my experience is. But it felt right. I had the in with the Scribe Valdez stuff from the game. That was the hook. And I think the fact that it's really about it's not even, I mean, it is about romance, but it is at its core more about relationships in general, family, friends. Like there's a lot in the show about Beth's relationship with her parents and her parents' marriage, and how that's she had the example of a normal loving family growing up, so she had that as a sort of as an example to use in forming her own romantic relationships later. Little things like that. But it really is about a lot of different kinds of love. It's about the romantic love that forms the center, the core narrative, but it's also about the love between friends. We have Beth, who loves Amanda as her best friend, and Odessa comes to love Amanda as a friend too. Beth loves her parents. Odessa loves her parents, even though they're all the way on the other side of the country, and she misses them. All those kinds of dynamics play into it, but it really, but it is the romance that forms the sort of the core thread that runs through everything, and what informs all of the action that happens.
And how has the show evolved over these 3 seasons?
I've gotten more. This isn't going to come out the way that I intend it to, but I can't think of another way to say it.
Shoot from the hip. This is our show.
I don't want to make it. I don't want it to sound arrogant because I don't mean it that way. But I've gotten more ambitious, and I take more chances now than I did at the beginning. I was definitely coloring inside the lines more in the first season, and then a little bit less in the second season, and now in the third season it's just Katie bar the door. I'm throwing everything at the wall and having fun with it. And I found I started to do that as the first season moved on, because like I said, I hadn't written anything in 25 years. So I had to, I wanted to sort of stay within myself a little bit just to make sure that I was able to execute. And then as I got more comfortable, I felt more comfortable taking more chances. But I think that's the main way that it's evolved. And also the characters have also evolved. Odessa is a very different Odessa than she was in the first season. Beth is a different Beth. Some of those relationships and dynamics have shifted, and some of that is down to the chemistry between performers. Some of it is just the way that those characters themselves evolve through the writing. Like I always say, the characters tell me who they are as I write the story, and sometimes they tell me that they're a little bit different than I maybe looked at them. But I also have to make sure that evolution makes sense to people listening, because you can't just abruptly change who somebody is because it works a little bit better. That just doesn't work. But like, I have to be careful about this. Where I draw my inspiration from is also important. And I have, I have experience in romantic relationships, like everybody does, and a lot of the early story beats came from my own experiences, things that happened in my relationships, and I used those as inspirations for story beats within the relationship between the two main characters. In the third season, I guess this is a little bit of a spoiler, but there's a conversation between two of the characters, and one of them is talking about a bump in the road that he had in his relationship with his wife when they were first starting to see each other. And the story he tells is they got into a big fight because she told him that he didn't love her. He loved the idea of her. And that really hurt him because there was some truth to it. And her saying it out loud made him realize that he was putting her on a pedestal that wasn't fair. And they worked it out. So that someone literally said exactly that to me once. So being able to draw from those sorts of things. And she won't get too mad at me for saying this because I've said it publicly before, but like there are so many things, especially in the second season, that are directly drawn from conversations that Vid and I have had, like things that I have said to her, things that she has said to me, that I have worked into scripts because they really resonate. They're powerful moments, especially if you can make them a part of an existing plot line within the story, to really bring a point home. So those kinds of things have also happened as well. So there's I think it really does come down to understanding where I can and should take inspiration from, as well as having a better sense of what kinds of chances I should take, what kind of risks I should take in the way that I tell the story and the specific stories that I tell.
Well, I from the perspective of the most famous 30-year veteran of multiple mediums that you've never heard of, it sounds like you're right on track as a writer.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that that's the one thing that I knew I could do, that I knew I could at least execute on to the point that I can make a show. You know what I mean? Like, whether or not it's going to accomplish what I want to accomplish is another matter. But I knew that I would be able to put a series of scripts together and make that part of it happen. And that does take some pressure off, because I know some folks that I've talked to who were very early on in the process who didn't have that experience and comfort level. That can get in the way of creativity. If you're worried about how to format your script because you're just not familiar with it, you're not comfortable with it yet, well then if you're spending brain power on that's brain power that you're not spending on the story itself or getting a piece of dialogue or an interaction right, those kinds of things. So having that out of the way helped a lot.
Indeed.
I use Final Draft, by the way, to write my scripts, and that is a godsend, because it makes the workflow so much easier. I don't have to worry about anything from a technical standpoint when I write, because that program does everything so intuitively, and that helps a lot because I don't have to worry about it.
Yes, I have a very ancient copy of that. I think 5.0 or something like that.
Oh wow, it's 13 just came out.
I know. I use, what is that other online tool? It's Citra something. There's an online tool.
Other ones. There's Scrivener. There's Writer Duet. There's one other one that people use. A lot of people just use Google Docs, and I think that there's some kind of template. I've never tried it.
There is, and I have the template. I do have the script writing template for that, and we use that frequently for collaborations the various animations that we're doing. But there is actually a professional collaboration tool, and the monthly on it is outrageous. But you can actually have 3 active scripts for free in it.
Okay.
And I'll have to get that for you because I'm totally blanking on it because I haven't used it 2022.
Well, Final Draft does have collaboration, but the downside of it is everybody has to have Final Draft.
Right. Which, for those of you who are new to the business, kids, it's about a $200 program.
And it is the industry standard and has been for a very long time. Like
worth every penny.
Absolutely, yeah. You will get. Although you do have to be careful sometimes when you're dealing with a studio, and even occasionally if it's an agent, they will want your FDX file, and you have to be careful. You have to make sure you have to make sure that you're sending it to someone that you trust, because that's a very easy way to steal a script,
especially if you have your liner notes in it.
Yeah.
Because that explains. So again, for the kids that don't understand, your liner notes are basically your inner thoughts about why things occur in a script.
Yeah, and Final Draft, I don't know if the version you have supports it, but it has outlines, it has a beat board, it has all kinds of stuff that are that kind of that kind of inner workings thing. It's not just the script. There's all kinds of stuff that goes along with it that's included in that file.
Celtics. That's what the CELTX. That's the script writing software that I use.
I've heard people mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, that has the beat boxes and the outlines and all that, but it's like $90 a month if you want.
Yeah, that's
use the. Oh, we want to do an entire series with 60 episodes a season, and yeah. So that's what it is. I'll have to log in there because I was doing a collaboration with Carrie Means of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and I need to get back into that. Yeah, it's actually not so bad. It's $25 a month for Writer Pro.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get production planning tools for an additional $10 a month.
That's one of the things I like about Final Draft is it's a one-time cost and not a subscription.
I thought that they did move to a subscription model.
No.
Nope. Okay.
Yeah, because I have 2 copies and they're just regular old one-time purchases.
I'm just upset that I didn't get this old copy of Final Cut Pro for video editing for $15 at a thrift store.
I had a higher ed discount, so I got the Pro Tools for Education, Logic Pro, and Final Cut Pro for $200 for both of them.
See, now that's a hell of a deal.
Yeah, that was a really good deal.
Once again, for the kids out there, it's a $1,500 to $2,500 program if you don't buy it at the right place at the right time. Depending on the package you buy.
Yep.
And virtually everybody's going to a subscription model these days too. Yeah, Adobe being the most egregious offender, but moving on.
Yeah, I've been using Photoshop since version 2.0, so I'm not going to switch now. I'll pay them their $10 a month.
Oh yeah. After Effects is I am a slave to After Effects.
That's how they get you.
But I'll use CS6 until the industry forces me to change. Did everybody else drop off? Because it sounds like I'm getting messages.
No,
I'm still here.
Yeah. Anyway, so where is the show right now in its 3rd season?
So, in what sense?
I'm like, without going too much into spoilers, where are our heroes and what are they doing?
Okay, yeah. So I like to, in each season, I used something from Fallout lore as a jumping off point. And in the 3rd season, I used the references to H.P. Lovecraft that are present in Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, and there's also technically one in Fallout 76, but it's just a very subtle, sort of almost tangential thing in 76. But really, in Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, those are the two games that it's most prevalent in. So in Fallout 3, there's the Blackhall family that they're trying to find their elder god, Uqaltoth, which I have to side note, Apple Podcasts with iOS 17.4, which just came out now in the podcast app, it will automatically generate a transcript for the podcast you're listening to, and it did a great job on my last episode. But it did struggle with Uqaltoth, the Lovecraftian elder god that's referenced in Fallout 3. And one of the ways that it came up with was UG QUAL TODD. So I said, oh, so it's Uqal Todd Howard. but anyway, so the Lovecraft stuff is what I used as sort of the inspiration for this season. And I also have a personal fascination with a couple of different areas of mythology that are not specifically touched on in Fallout, but I felt like that was my in to explore those a little bit. So the two main things that are there are Celtic mythology, so like Tir Nal, Tir na Nog, the Book of Invasions, all these different pieces of Celtic mythology, mostly Irish mythology, a little bit of Scots, and also the various Grail cycle stuff, the Arthurian legends, and bringing those in a way that loops into the Lovecraft stuff. So you combine Lovecraft with Celtic mythology and have a little fun with it, but always keep it grounded and tied into Fallout lore. That's the most important thing, because otherwise you're not telling it's not a Fallout story anymore if you're just off telling your own thing about Fomorians and the Tuatha and all those other things. So that's sort of bringing those things together is another way that I guess I kind of enjoyed challenging myself a little bit. And I think because it's the third season and people, if they've listened from the beginning, I think have a feel for how I write and how I tell stories. What I'm hoping is they will have their anticipation built up to see what the hook is for this sort of detour we take for a few episodes in the middle of the season. Like, how does this tie back into Fallout? And I think that's been done in a pretty effective way.
And
But the Lovecraft stuff is neat. It's neat stuff. I mean, Lovecraft in general. I'm not a Lovecraft expert. I actually brought on a Lovecraft consultant this season because I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything I could. Because you don't know what you don't know. So I wanted to make sure that I was leveraging not just the stuff from the games, but also sort of the wider portfolio of Lovecraft's work.
And how long does a season typically run for?
So that was a decision I made early on, and I think it comes from my overall background being in TV. Is I'm very structured and I'm very process oriented. So my seasons last 10 episodes, and I release on a 3-week cadence. So that usually means what that's meant, and it'll be the same way this year, is start in October-ish and run through May. So the 10th episode of this season is scheduled to go out on May 20th. So it's almost not too far off, like the period of time that a regular American TV series gets released. Just not every week, because I can't do that. Doing it every 3 weeks instead of every week, and just having that kind of fall, winter, early spring release schedule.
I mean, makes sense.
Yeah, but there's, go ahead.
This isn't a conversational podcast; it's a fictional one, and that takes a lot more effort.
Yeah, and that's I think the being process oriented helps that, because I have a pretty strict production schedule of when I need to have things done by. So like, and the actors going in, I always tell them as soon as I cast them, hey, here's how we generally do things, and I give 2 weeks for people to record once they have the script in their hand, and I always say, hey, if something comes up, please let me know. We'll figure it out. But that way they know going in, I'm going to get a script on this date. I'm going to have 2 weeks to record it. So, because people have lives, this is, people got a lot going on. So giving them that length of time to be able to find the time to do that recording is important to me, because I want to respect their time and their effort, because none of this happens without the amazing job that they do. And it also helps me stay accountable, because I know I have to have a script done by date X. And I have a week, sort of a wiggle week in there, where if I have to, I can finish up writing an episode while I'm editing the previous one. But I prefer not to do that, because it's a lot easier to just have one thing to do. But keeping that strict production schedule definitely helps keep things on track.
Makes sense. If you didn't have a tight production, then things probably fall behind.
I've seen that happen. Sometimes people will make a show, and they understand the amount of time that they have to commit to it. So because of the way that their personal situation is, maybe they can't have that strict production schedule, and they just sort of do it as they can. But when that happens, things naturally tend to slide. And one thing that Tom from Robots Radio told me early on, and I really took this to heart, was consistency is one of the most important things that you can have. So if you can release on a regular schedule, whether it's once a week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, once a month, if you get past a month, then it becomes a little bit less important, because that's such a big gap. But as long as you can maintain some sort of consistency, so people will understand and sort of get used to when things are coming out, that's the kind of thing that can help people continue to come back and listen. So that was, like I said, I really took that to heart, and that's one of the reasons that I'm so strict with myself on making sure that I get scripts in on time, and I make sure I leave myself enough room for editing, and also make sure that I give the actors enough time to edit, or enough time to record.
And how long are you looking to continue with this series?
So this is going to be our final season. We announced that early on, and I decided really when I started the show that if I could, I wanted to go for 3 seasons. I didn't know if I would be able to do 3 seasons, but that was sort of what I wanted to do. And I wanted to end. Well, I shouldn't even say that. I wasn't really too strict about the specific event I wanted to end on, but I decided that I wanted to end on the wedding of the 2 main characters. So I know that I'm working toward that. But yeah, we were planning on a 3-season run, and we're getting there.
Just as long as it's not a shotgun wedding.
No, it's a very intricately planned wedding.
Something red wedding.
Yeah, that's
a Fallout 2 reference.
Well, the comparison I made was, is it going to be a normal wedding, or is it going to be a soap opera wedding or a wrestling wedding?
Oh my.
Yeah.
So the cake's getting destroyed.
Mhm. Now all the guests will be back at craft services or back in catering, and but yeah, it's and I talked with this was one of the things that that Vit told me was I was like, do I want to actually have the wedding in the show, or do I just want to talk about it in an epilogue? And she's like, you have to actually have the wedding. People are going to be mad if you don't put the wedding in. It's like, okay, I'll go with you on that one.
And do you think you'll be doing more Fallout stuff after this program concludes?
I don't know. I that's one thing. I tend not to think about that. Like, even I didn't make a formal decision to do another season until a couple of months after the previous season ended. So I do have, because reasons, I'm probably not going to be able to make anything for the rest of this year after this after this show ends. I have some stuff that I'm going to have to take care of that's going to probably preclude me from doing anything. But that'll just mean that I'll be able to come back sort of refreshed. And, you know, and I have ideas for both. I have ideas for completely separate projects that have absolutely nothing to do with Fallout. And I also have some ideas for spin-offs from this show, and even, you know, completely separate Fallout concepts. So that's the thing. And the fact that, I'll tell you, the fact that Bethesda has gotten behind us makes it awfully difficult to not want to do another Fallout project. You know, I remember very early on, because Kenny, who does the Chad podcast, could not be a better guy, and he's helped me immensely, and he's been in with Bethesda for a long time. When he first started Chad, some of the developers started to listen to it, and things flowed from there. And yeah, that's where that came from. And I asked him point blank, I said, what do I need to do to make that happen? Like, can you introduce me to somebody, or can I reach out to somebody? He said, it doesn't work that way. You just do what you're doing, and if they are going to reach out, they will. That's how it works. You can't make it happen. And lo and behold, eventually it did happen, and that's pretty darn cool. And I don't want to lose that, because it's such a rare thing that you know, it would be silly to squander it, because it's not the kind of relationship that a creator in my position normally gets. So, you know, I want to make sure that, and you know, I also, they've shown faith in me, and they've shown faith in the show, so I also want to, you know, justify that and honor that.
Understandable. I mean, that is, as, you know, big of a gold star as you would ever get, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, that really is the highest peak you can achieve, I think, in this space is to have that, you know, to have that kind of recognition. Like, you know, the Fallout Twitter account follows the show account, you know, things like that. And that's, you know, that stuff is, it makes you feel good, you know, because it's one thing for them to let you do what you're doing and not hassle you about it, but to actually recognize it and get behind it is another thing entirely. And we're, as far as I know, I think it's just us and Chad that have gotten that kind of recognition and backing from Bethesda, I think. So it's extremely rare. But one thing that's also interesting is, we talked about the Signal Awards, and that's an indication of the mainstream recognition that the show's gotten. The mainstream attention that the show's gotten, because you generally it's hard enough to get recognition for a genre piece, but something that's based on an existing IP, that is extremely rare to see something like that get any kind of mainstream play, because people dismiss it whether or not it's good. I guess because there's a lot that isn't, but there's also a lot that is. So getting that out there is something, and I think that's probably what Bethesda noticed, was that mainstream attention, since that's not something that normally happens.
Hmm.
And again, the antithesis of the CBS reaction to Alec Peters.
Yeah.
yeah. And I'll tell you, I'm glad that Bethesda is the way they are, and I'm glad that Microsoft hasn't changed that about them.
I think they feel that they walk around with a big enough bat that they don't have to worry about people absconding with their IP.
Yeah, that's probably it. Like they feel like they don't have to be as litigious as Nintendo.
Little from column A of confidence and a little from column B of arrogance, but if as long as it works out for you, that's the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I will say it's been difficult. It's been expensive. But it's been extremely gratifying, and just meeting. I think I mentioned meeting Vit has been worth the price of admission. If that's the only thing that I accomplished out of this thing, I'm doing great. But yeah. all the other people that I have met, like Letitia, also wonderful person, so talented, works harder than anybody I think I've ever encountered in my life. Lucy is amazing. Lucy and her husband Ray are the people who do. They're the people that run the Fallout 5.0 role play group. Both fantastic people. Just really nice, generous, super talented. Just awesome people. And then all the other creators in the space that don't do audio fiction, but do other kinds of creative stuff, like, streamers, or somebody like Charo, she streams and she also does art. She did our season 3 art and our season 2 art. People like Fergassier or Tuniversal who stream. All these people that I've met, that's pretty awesome. And to be part of that creative community is pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. I feel exactly the same way, because again, some parallel paths, as they say. I absconded with about a third of some of the mid-tier to top-tier names from Funimation for my own project. So, a couple people from Viz, Richard Epcar.
Nice.
The reason I cited him separately is because he is an entity unto himself.
More ways than one.
Yes.
He actually got upset with us because we didn't go on for 4 hours, because that's the minimum amount of time we would have needed to cover even a tenth of his career.
Right. It's like talking to Wes Johnson. It's like,
yeah,
like how much time you got? Not enough.
Yeah. It would be like if we had J.K. Simmons on the show or something.
Boys, Dawn's coming, please. I need to go to bed.
I'm Cave Johnson, and I approve this message.
Oh God, Cave Johnson. Oh my goodness, that performance. I have not laughed that hard at a video game. It just how it progressively got more unhinged in a hilarious way. It was
Now with 60% more bullet per bullet. Oh God.
Anyhow.
All right. Now we've been going for about 90 minutes, and this is loads of fun. But I did hear there was time constraints, so I want to make sure that we get everything covered that we want to cover. So,
I mean, I finished my questioning, so
I have no questions.
I'm good.
all right. All right.
Yeah. I'm just up a little bit past my normal bedtime.
Yeah.
That's really all it is. I have a phone call at 7:30 tomorrow morning, and
Oops.
yeah,
Where-
that's all right.
Where exactly are you right now?
Yeah, but you know what?
Yeah, I'm in North Carolina, so I'm East Coast.
East Coast. Okay. Yep. All right.
Whoops.
We should let you go.
Yeah. Yeah. But come on, you know us creatives, we operate purely on G Fuel and spite.
Yeah, one of the jokes that I don't want to say, it's not even a joke. One of the things I said was it's not like the old days when you're sitting physically in a room and one of the producers walks in and hands you a script and said, "We need this rewritten because we shoot 8:00 tomorrow morning." They give you the script, a typewriter, and a bottle of vodka, and just say, "Good luck." or a bowl of cocaine, I guess. That was never my scene.
The Stephen King methodology. Do an 8-ball on Friday and then come down with a galvanized garbage can filled with ice water and beer cans. Crank out 1,000 pages in a weekend.
Yeah, that was that was the 80s and 90s Gonzo method of script writing there.
You mean the glory days?
Right? Yeah. I'm too old for that now.
Oh God. Oh my God, Brad! It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you about all of this stuff, and we definitely got to have you back on the show when you have either. We could do a summation of how things went after all things wrap up with Fallout, or we could talk to you again when your next project hits.
Yeah, and I might be able to, depending on timing. Vit is also a co-producer on the show.
Oh,
so depending on timing, her schedule is a little bit more packed than mine is, but we've done interviews and appearances together to talk about the show before. So she's great. She's awesome. She's a much better face of this thing than I am. And she brings a much different perspective to it too. Because she came in as an actor and sort of grew into a role as a co-producer. But she approaches everything with every bit as much passion as I do. She believes in this every bit as strongly as I do. So it's we bring different things to the table, and it's always interesting when we're on discussing things.
Right. All right, so my standard final question is this. Anything that you wish to give a shout out to, or any appearances you'll be making that people need to be aware of that might not be?
Let's see. This isn't embargoed. So, well, it's Thursday now, at least here on the East Coast. On Friday, March 8th. See, it's past my bedtime, so I'm even getting the month wrong. Right. This Friday, March 8th, 2024, I would recommend that folks keep an eye on Fallout.com for an article that will be appearing there. So that should be, if people are so inclined, it'll also be promoted on their social media and all that kind of good stuff. But that keep your eyes on Fallout.com this Friday. That will be
intrigued.
Yeah. Let's see what else is there. I am the scheduling for this is a little bit up in the air because of some stuff that's happened with the production team. But I did write an episode of a Starfield anthology podcast. That's the anthology is called Frontier Stories from Starfield, and I wrote a story called Elysium, which I don't know when it will be released, but it will be released at some point. Vit is in that, and also Zoe Lee, who appeared in the second season of the show and is absolutely freaking amazing, is also in that. And that's a thing that will eventually come out. I don't know when. So I'm trying to think of what else there is. I would highly recommend that folks check out Vit and Letitia, the two leads. You can find Vit on Twitter at Plays Vitriol, and Letitia is Letitia the Lemon. her Letitia Lemon is her real name, but she the Letitia Lemon was taken, so she had Letitia the Lemon, and that's kind of become her brand. But Letitia, yeah, she's awesome. Like I said, nobody works harder than her, and she brings so much, not just skill and talent, but passion. Like she invests herself in the role of Beth just absolutely amazingly, and she is as professional, if not more so, than anybody that I have ever worked with. She is absolutely fantastic. But that's you can the best place to find me or the show is on Twitter. Also, the Twitter account is Once Upon 76 Pod. I am usually the one who's posting from there, but Vit also has access to the account, and she will also post from there occasionally. But that's sort of the main place that we send information out on. We're also on Blue Sky at onceuponawasteland.com. My personal account is reticentduet.onceuponawasteland.com on Blue Sky, and on Twitter it's reticentduet. I think that's really it. I mentioned earlier Modus Files, the show that I still appear in to this day. It's also a Fallout 76 based show, completely different vibe. It is much more focused on existing stuff in the game, exploring those kinds of things. It's also very much not a romance. It's it's more of almost a Tom Clancy kind of a feel to it. So I definitely recommend that people check that out. And I think that's probably the main stuff that I can think of off the top of my head.
Right.
Oh, and I should also probably mention that the show itself is available on every podcast player that I'm aware of. You can just search for Once Upon a Wasteland to find it, and that's certainly the easiest way to actually listen to the show. We're also on YouTube. We have a channel there. All the episodes are there. I also have some things like music selections and a couple of scenes that I put up there. So we're everywhere that there is to be found. We can be found.
Right.
Well, that's fairly comprehensive there.
I was taught by people that knew what they were doing, so that helps, because I certainly did not.
Winging it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It is impressive. It's almost like I've heard people say this about being a parent. I'm a parent. When you're younger, you think that your parents know everything, and then when you become a parent, you realize just how full of shit everyone is. Like, and not in a disrespectful way. You're just like, oh, like they were just flying by the seat of their pants like I am right now.
Indeed. All right, now, not that I want to give you the bum's rush, but I want to make sure that you get a little bit of rest for your meeting in the morning. Everybody, that was Brad Williams of Once Upon a Wasteland, a Fallout story. Be sure to check them out on their website and where you download your favorite podcasts. I'm sure they're there. Wonderful talking to you, and I really appreciate you putting up with our technical irregularities. It's pretty much a staple around here.
It's a staple everywhere. So like I said, I'm very familiar with technical difficulties.
All right. We're going to be talking entertainment next, but that's it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, folks.
All right.
Later.
All right. That was fantastic. I'm glad I was able to participate in that.
Are we off?
We're still on the air. We have another segment.
Oh, okay.
That's what we're saying is you have the option to stay if you wish.
Well, I'm gonna go to bed. That's why I asked, because my undergraduate degree is in broadcast journalism. Always assume that every mic is a hot mic. So
we are live.
Yeah, I'm not a milkshake duck or anything. I wouldn't have said anything offensive, but it's still also it's always good to know. Well, anyway, thank you very much again, guys, and have a great rest of the show.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you so much.
Cheers. All right, now
Yes. All right. Gosh, is there any entertainment left to talk about?
God damn! Fucking just got
yes.
word today. Rooster Teeth is dying.
Oh no.
No, Rooster Teeth is dead.
Oh,
Yeah,
fuck.
yeah. It's officially dead. Yeah.
Yeah. So after 21 years of existence, the once venerable internet production company Rooster Teeth is no more. Like
They have bitten their last cock.
Essentially, yeah.
The coincidence of this happening shortly after being bought by Warner Brothers and having a failed attempt to cross over one of their big things with the DCU is
So that's incorrect. Like, they were not bought by Warner Brothers. They were bought by AT&T. They were bought by a subsidiary called Otter Media. Same
Right.
subsidiary that controlled Crunchyroll.
Yep.
That means Rooster Teeth, they were something that Discovery inherited.
Yeah.
Which was already something that put them on the back foot because,
Yeah.
it was just one of those things that came along for the ride.
It still follows that it's the. I saw someone. I was talking to someone earlier, and they said that it used to be that I think it was on Twitter that being acquired by another thing would give you confidence in the longevity of your brand and stuff. And nowadays, if you get bought by someone, it's looking less and less likely that you're going to be around in a couple of years.
Well,
It
Rooster
depends on
Teeth
who
has
buys
actually been
you.
owned. Yeah. Okay. That is inaccurate. At least when it comes to Rooster Teeth. Because here's the fact of the matter. Rooster Teeth was having problems.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Genlock flopped. Ruby crossover with DCU did not do well.
And there was a lot more problems than that.
That wasn't the big problem.
Weren't they racked with scandal?
Yes.
That's what I was waiting for. That's what I was waiting for you to bring up.
I'm trying to get there. But
yeah.
The internet being what it is right now, people are pretending that we are losing, some great
a flawless luminary.
It's like, and the true sad thing here is that like 150 people are losing their jobs. That is the tragedy. Not that Rooster Teeth itself is sinking beneath the waves. Because, if I'm being honest, on balance, Rooster Teeth probably deserves this fate. Now,
I mean, red versus blue has kind of run its course.
Red versus blue is ancient history. That's not what I'm talking about here.
No, but I'm just saying, in general, what do they have? Like, I haven't heard of anything in the media since Monty Ohm died and left Ruby in their and I say this with air quotes, capable hands.
I mean, it was still happening though.
Ruby is still their big property. I'm like, if you want to know what else that they created, Genlock. This piece of
I vaguely remember that they did a crossover with Paladins. I have some of the Genlock skins.
Yeah, Genlock. This was their big project.
bargain basement Overwatch.
I'm like, that's one way of putting it. But, Genlock, that was the big, ambitious, expensive project that literally crashed and burned. I'm like, and dear God,
to be clear,
the larger Warner Brothers try to push that piece of shit.
Yeah.
To be clear, the low rent Overwatch is Paladins.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Just wanted to clarify that. But then crossing over with Genlock was like, okay.
At least you tried.
Yeah.
Like,
I literally had a reaction of when the skins started appearing in the game, I was literally like, what the fuck is this? And everybody was like, it's a thing. And I'm like, yeah, but with who?
I'm like,
Oh, well.
yeah, I'm like, having been forced fed the first season of Genlock when it was on Toonami, it is one of the most nothing pieces of fiction I have ever seen. Like, they didn't even give a motivation to the enemy, much less a fake. Like it is some of the vaguest shit you will ever watch. And apparently, season 2 was even worse, which is
Oh dear God.
scary. Like, but yeah. So from what I understand, Genlock failed hard, and
Yeah.
that's a big reason why they've been losing money since like 2019. But yeah, the other big thing is their management has been scandal plagued.
Yeah. That's a good way to put
Yeah,
it.
that's the thing I've been hearing.
Yeah. Like they weren't exactly,
to put it in quasi tropic thunder parlance.
Yeah.
They seem to be going full channel awesome.
Like
Yeah.
They seem to be going full Miramax.
Well, yeah, okay. So there were the sexual harassment accusations. Like there was the crunch accusations. And there's the harassment, there's the bigotry, just awful culture. Now, I'll grant you, all this is a couple of years old at this point in time, but
yeah, but the damage was a critical hit. The damage was a critical hit.
Yeah.
Reputational, yep.
This is ultimately why I will not shed any tears for the death of Rooster Teeth. Like, they should have died back when this shit hit the fan, quite frankly. Like, and it's unfortunate that, they got the axe because, another cost cutting measure here. I'm like, but I'll be honest, I'm surprised that they were given as much time as they were given that we're 2.5 years out from the merger.
Yeah, and it probably might have a lot to do with some of the fact that there was some stuff in the can that they wanted out, and then now there's pretty much nothing in the can for them. So,
as good a time as any to quit. As good a time as any to quit.
Right. Yeah. Although, or at the very least, nothing in the can that's close enough to be put onto the screen.
Right. Isn't this kind of the fate of this entire, we'll call it, era or class of content creators on the internet? It seems a
good chunk of them.
It's feeling
it seems like if you take this like 1999 early 2000s stuff that
yeah, it's more it's more late 2000s, less with this type
I'm saying okay. So anything that really rose to prominence between 1999 and 2008. Let's say it seems that they have a similar villainous story arc.
I want to go back. I want to go back to 99. I would probably lean more again mid 2000s, like probably anything from 2005, 6 onward is where it's going. 2005, 6.
Yeah, I'm talking more about their business model because they're one of the things that got really, really big during the era of when YouTube had a viable ad structure and, multi-channel services ruled the roost.
Yeah.
From what I understand,
and those multi-channel services had a solid business model that wasn't predatory as hell.
Yeah.
Hey, remember when everybody could make money on YouTube?
Yeah. From what I understand, they just could not adapt to the sponsorship era of YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also, just their numbers were dropping. To the point where they were taking content off of YouTube and putting it on, paywalling.
Yeah.
Which is not a sign of health.
Yeah, because hey, you think the idea of the paywall is a good one, but in reality, it doesn't really work the way you like it to.
And what's extremely telling about this is, Warner Brothers was looking for a buyer for the Rooster Teeth network, and nobody was biting, or everyone else is dead.
Mm.
That's kind of the state of things here in this particular niche.
Yeah.
That's been a big problem. I've been on over the last decade. I've been on a number of podcasts and discussed this with a number of people in the industry. And this unusual. There was a narrow window of time where this particular type of content, we'll call it the legacy of Rooster Teeth and Channel Awesome and Spoonie and all that stuff was that they were right place, right time. And now that ship has sailed. And because they didn't adapt and change with it, they're lost.
Well, it's not even necessarily adapting and changing, because the nostalgia critic still has a fucking audience out there.
Well, well, it's not going to be just for him now.
Yeah.
Let me make my point.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my point is, if you're an individual and you're still in control of your own destiny, and you achieved a certain level of fame and an audience, you can still do this without changing with the times. Like I will grant that what the nostalgia critic doing now, or even a few years ago, what he was doing in 2008. My point is, he's still doing the same fundamental thing that he was back in the day. Same for like the AVGN. The program isn't exactly the same, but it's like it's still recognizably the AVGN.
But you see, I'm blanking on his name. James, yes. You see, James diversified. Cinemassacre is more than the sum total of the AVGN. It is many things. It's him and Mike talking about board games.
Mike Matai is gone.
But I'm just saying that over the years he's adapted. He's brought in different people and done different things. He has things like Board James and the VHS reviews and stuff like that. So I mean, he's changed a lot. He's not just the like Doug and the nostalgia critic is locked in the box.
Well, yeah, he's changed, but not for the better. But that's a different discussion.
But at least he's tried other things. He's not just doing exactly it. Yeah.
That's not my point. I'm not talking about all the little side projects, because at the end of the day, James Rolfe is still best known, still most watched for the AVGN. Ditto for Doug has had a dozen side projects. People may not remember, say, the reviews, but it happened. It's ultimately, these people are still doing what they are doing and not disappearing into the ether because they aren't, they don't have a corporate master to answer to in the sense of someone like Warner Brothers or what have you, or Disney, or insert large corporation here. It's like they can continue doing this indefinitely versus Rooster Teeth, which was losing money for Warner Brothers, and this is not a time you want to be doing that. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but Warner Brothers Discovery isn't exactly in a good shape right now. Like, basically they got WCW.
Pretty much.
Ouch.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it seems like all of the ancient halls of power are starting to collapse in the entertainment industry.
Perhaps time will.
Paramount is literally on the precipice. Warner Brothers is failing spectacularly.
Well, I'm like, time will tell on that, and but as far as what the future holds for the corpse of Rooster Teeth, this is where things get interesting. So, not all of Rooster Teeth is actually dead. Their podcast network is still alive, and that looks to be sold off to somebody or maybe spun off. That's actually the part that's surviving. And as far as the big brands, they're up for sale. Ruby's probably going to get bought by somebody, probably Crunchyroll, if I had to guess.
Like, I mean, they still have a vested interest with Ruby, so.
Well, like
it'll be Crunchyroll or A24, one of those two.
Well, yeah. Well, here's the thing: Ruby is actually a Crunchyroll production now, as of Volume 9. So, not sure who would pick up the animation, but I'm like, it'd be hard to do worse than what we were already getting from Rooster Teeth. Like, I understand Ruby has its fans, but look, it still looks like a PlayStation 2 game. Even now.
Still has a large fan base, though, despite all of that.
The models look better in Paladins, bringing that joke full circle.
As far as the other stuff, once again, it's up for sale. Probably less value there. As far as archives, everyone's been advised to get to the archiving because we're talking about Warner Brothers Discovery, who's not exactly been the best about this shit.
To say the least.
Like,
to say the very fucking least.
Well, I mean, this is a good transition to an update on Coyote versus Acme.
That's not happening. Yeah. Well, bottom line, that's not happening.
Well, here's the thing: we have gotten the script leaked.
Yeah, or the plot synopsis.
Yeah, so
detailed plot synopsis at least. Yes,
that's at least out there now. But yeah, as far as the movie itself, like, look, Warner Brothers
it's probably gone.
Yeah, went to the spite route here.
Yeah.
Yeah. They are to put it into an obscure Next Generation reference, they are the Nufians of the entertainment industry. They don't give a fuck about preserving history.
Yeah, pretty much.
As long as it gives them a tax incentive.
Yeah.
Yep.
Preservation means nothing to them at this point. It used to be that you had the Warner Archive where you could order obscure movies of the 1930s and 40s on a specially made DVD just for you.
Right.
And now they're like double middle finger to everything about the film industry.
Well, I mean, this is what happens when you get bought out by Discovery.
Mm-hmm.
AKA Bargain Basement Documentary Central.
That'd be an improvement to what they run on fucking Discovery these days. Remember,
reality TV.
This is the entity that brought Honey Boo Boo to the world. I do think I have to say more.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, now for something completely different. And
okay.
A lot more irrelevant.
Let me jangly walk over to the other side now.
Because the 2024 Anime Awards were held this weekend at 6 in the morning.
The what now?
Oh dear.
The Anime Awards.
I know what I know. I'm being facetious here.
No, or
Kevin's yanking you.
Yeah.
I'm basically the guy who's just going to basically say, the newest addition to the. Why the hell do we have this again? Oh, right. It's because of It's because it's a corporate shindig for Sony.
Yeah, it's like if if we were renaming this thing, we should call them the Shonies. Because, good God.
Yes.
Like.
That's a reference to the restaurant chain, correct?
Well, yes.
Sure.
Yes. Basically. Yeah,
and now introducing 5-time Kids' Choice nominee. Anyway.
I was actually just about to say what these are now. Essentially, is no different from MTV and the VMAs or Nickelodeon and the Kids' Choice Awards.
Well, that's
really
but you're just 5 times nominated. You didn't actually win.
Well, that's because this is a voting. This is an external voting awards thing.
Oh dear God!
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Via the internet.
Text homina to 55385.
I mean, it's look, and now it has about as much credibility as the Teen Choice Award, because
yeah.
Because
remember those kids?
Because guess what? The big award winners.
A series that I want nothing to do with.
Okay,
it's a 3-letter word. It's a 3-letter word. It's 3 letters.
Don't be coy about it. Just say it out loud. Yeah, okay.
JJK. Yeah.
Oh dear God.
I was winding it up. 3 letters. JJK.
Yeah, Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 was the big winner.
And what's wrong with that?
Good question.
Good question.
If you think about it, Season 2 of a mainline Jump franchise isn't kind of necessarily the thing you think of when you think of Anime of the Year.
I'm like, mind you, last year at the Anime Awards, the big winner was Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba.
Which, at least I think
the point that Kevin is trying to make, Golix, is that when you're trying to think of the largesse of artistic
anime
and storytelling value and all that stuff, the second season of a potentially 1,000 plus episode series is not the first thing you think of.
Or more
something that grinds out of the mill, that produces stuff like Bleach and Naruto and One Piece and Fairy Tail, all of which just go on forever because
not Fairy Tail, because that show Jokoku-ken lets Let's be careful there.
Anyway.
That's Kodansha.
Listen. No, what I was getting at is they didn't create any of those series with the intention of ever having an end game.
I'm like,
there are story arcs, but as is the tradition with shonen manga and anime, is that they are written to be infinitely serialized.
Things have changed because, that's certainly no longer the case with most shonen anime.
Yeah.
They not all. Like we still get the endless weekly things occasionally, but Jujutsu Kaisen isn't one of those.
Yeah. No,
I want to say this isn't necessarily a negative. Like I'm not critical hitting it. I'm just saying that something that is designed to be endlessly cyclical is not necessarily the first thing you think of when you're thinking to yourself, "Oh yeah, this is like an art house masterpiece or something."
Well, yeah,
endlessly cyclical is how I describe most of it.
Maybe individual arcs, but
guys,
not the whole thing.
Other big winners at the Anime Awards. Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba, Swordsmith Village arc. Spy Family, Season 1, Core 2. Fucking Attack on Titan, the final chapters, Special 1.
Yeah, well,
One Piece is winning awards here.
Hey, why not? Shoot, I'm not mad at that.
And basically, all of the most popular battle shonen, the most popular of popular anime, is taking all of the awards. Like you would see at something like the Teen Choice Awards, the VMAs, the Nickelodeon Choice Awards, and all. And there is value in that, but in terms of trying to claim actual artistic credibility here, no.
Nope.
I'm like,
nope. Just no.
Especially since they did all the voting online, and
pretty much. We know how that works.
Guess what happens when you have online voting? It gets rigged. Ask the Oscars about that when they tried that with that stupid audience award.
That didn't work. That did not work well at all.
You mean there's botting on the internet? Come on.
Yeah, I'm like, yes, because the audience truly thought that Flash entering the Speed Force was worthy of an Oscar.
Lord.
But yeah, we have a new. We have a new entry into the awards that basically are, you get these statuettes, you can just put them on your shelf and have it as a nice little handle piece.
Yeah,
just to fill up your shelf so it doesn't look empty.
Yeah, and it didn't always used to be this way. Like, when this award was, a few years ago, it was like Devilman Crybaby and winning, and a big contender was A Place Further Than the Universe. Now it. This is the equivalent of all the summer blockbusters taking all the Oscars.
Yeah.
It's just not something that's going to come across as, credible. And I know that's its own loaded statement.
But it's a fact.
Yeah. Because,
that's what happens when you get taken over by Sony money.
You get the occasional mainstream film up for Oscars and stuff like that, but you don't get all of the awards being taken by fucking Marvel movies.
Yeah. Hell, James Cameron's Avatar is the biggest movie of all time, and what happened at the Oscars with it? It didn't really get much.
Yeah. Like, basically, what you want to have winning awards to give you actual credibility is stuff like Heavenly Delusion and Ochi no Ko. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. Bocchi the Rock.
I was about to say Vinland Saga.
Yeah, Vinland Saga. Oh dear God, did that series get shafted here? Like, at least Bocchi the Rock won Best Slice of Life.
Yeah.
But it's
Vinland Saga not being here and probably not winning Anime of the Year over JJK is probably what made people look at this and go, "The hell?"
Yeah. Well, it's like I knew how useless this award has become when I saw, the entries for Best Couple, and they didn't have, Slueta and Minori
Bjorn.
in it.
Bjorn, yep.
I mean, it's like really, the couple that brought Gundam to new heights wasn't even on your fucking radar, and you're supposed to have credibility here?
Nope.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
I just want to be clear. You do have an opinion on this, right?
Maybe a smidge.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Just want to make sure I understand this correctly.
Here's the thing. It's like, this award thing offends me now that it's being voted on by the internet.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
When given the option to choose between 3 other objects and Moo, the internet will always choose Moo.
The wilder thing is that it's both the internet and a jury that does this. And you still get bad outcomes.
The jury determines the finalists, and the internet votes on those finalists. Like, look,
and when
the results couldn't.
The finalists are when the finalists select when the possible selections are, well, pretty biased, and then you give it to the internet. Well, the bias becomes extreme.
You made this a pure popularity contest, so of course, Jujutsu Kaisen, arguably the hottest shonen right now, got a boatload of awards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Versus Demon Slayer, whose last arc is generally considered to be one of the weaker ones.
Yeah, well,
it's like this was entirely fucking predictable because we've seen it happen last year. And fine. If you want to be one of the blockbuster awards or whatever, fine. But
blockbuster awards, that was actually a thing, by the way.
Yes, I know. But it's like, but if you're trying to be, one of the quote unquote serious awards, this isn't the way to do it. It's like even the Oscars had to learn that lesson, apparently.
The hard way.
Anyway, we should probably wrap things up because it's 1:30 in the morning.
The battle cry of an ever-aging podcast, bro.
Oh, I'm sure we can go on. It's more.
Oh, I know.
In the morning.
We got a full 2 hours and 10 minutes out of this puppy tonight. So hey,
that's right. Well, we had the virtue of a fantastic guest.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
So, and in spite of my technical difficulties, actually, I should briefly explain what is going on with me. So, as is my wont, I am pacing the rent, and my internet bill wasn't paid.
Oh boy.
So I am jury-rigging a phone to another phone that has a tethering plan.
Well, and
that tethering plan is LTE. So 18 megabits down and like a couple up if I'm lucky. 0.8 up on a regular day.
Yeah.
So that's why I was a little crackly at the beginning. It seems to have evened out, though.
Yeah, you sound so much better here.
But I had to spend. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I spent 20 minutes futzing with it, trying different headsets and things.
Well, it evened out.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's go over what we got going on next week. I've got the list in front of me. I have one desktop computer that has Wi-Fi that is actually connected to all this, so I do actually have the Google Doc. All right, so March 13th is our next episode, and we will have Wells Thompson of Mechaton, and more. Writer of Mechaton, Frankenstein, The Unconquered, and The Cat Skin and the Rose, a walking, exhausted Miyazaki meme. Any additional clarity you wish to add to that, Adam?
Oh, you were roboting there.
Oh.
I think that was just you, Adam.
Yeah. Anyway, so let me see here. Yeah, Mechaton. Yeah. Here we go. A comic about a space glove that turns into anything that punches into a battle mech. Like Frankenstein the Unconquered. 500 years into the future, Frankenstein's monster thaws from the Arctic and wreaks havoc on a broken world. Descent into Dread, an anthology of 12 horror comics, including the worst entry-level job of all time, and The Cat Skin and the Rose, is a sapphic romance adventure comic about two women in a tournament to catch feelings while crossing swords.
Damn.
Yeah.
Nice.
That is some stuff.
That is a very diverse collection there.
It is.
Well, then it's definitely something to look forward to. It's definitely something to look forward to. Hopefully everything will have stabilized by next week, and I will actually be able to return to using my desktop computer for broadcasting and whatnot, as opposed to attempting to, play the world's largest game of telephone with actual telephones.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Get the can and string, kids. We're going to do a podcast. All right, guys. So again, big thanks to our guest this week, Brad Williams of Once Upon a Wasteland. A Fallout story. Be sure to check that out. And we'll see you all in the view. Until then, I'm your host, Mac Paladin. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there.